Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's story takes place in Brick Township, New Jersey. It was established in the 1850s, but in the 1880s it began being split up into several townships, which I have highlighted some of them here. It is close to the Atlantic Ocean, only separated by the Barnegat Bay and a stretch of boardwalks. All along the Jersey shore you will find boardwalks. They are all pretty much the same: rides, carnival games, restaurants, and bars. Some have casinos and access to water parks. If you want to get to the beaches on the Atlantic in Jersey, be prepared to pay for a pass. Some beaches you can get on for free, but only after 4 p.m. or some after 6 p.m. Brick Township was home to 17-year-old Juliet Linzmayer, who was also called Julie. Julie was born on August 29, 1951. She was the only daughter of 3 children born to her parents. Her father died in January of 1966. I am not sure if the issues Julie was having started before or after her father's death, but she was known to be a frequent runaway and fell behind a couple years in school. Whatever the family dynamic was at the time, Julie went to live in a foster home in Hazel Township and attended her freshman year at Raritan High School. In June of 1968, Julie moved back to her mother's home in Brick Township and was going to start her sophomore year at Brick Township High School. September 3, 1968. Julie left her home in Brick Township around noon. She was walking to her grandparents' house in Point Pleasant, which was 6 miles away and over a 2-hour walk. She was also known to hitchhike, and back then it was commonplace. Julie never made it to her grandparents' house. The following day, September 4th, Julie's mom reported her missing. September 21st, 1968. 3 men in a canoe were fishing on the Mendocott River in Lakewood and discovered a body floating face down. The body was fully clothed except for one shoe missing, which was found 2 miles away in the river. The body was badly decomposed from being in the water for over 18 days. September 22nd, 1968. The body was positively identified as Julie's. The medical examiner said she died from blunt force trauma to the skull. She had been struck at least 2 to 3 times. He ruled out drowning as a cause of death. On the same day, police arrested a 23-year-old man in his hotel room. He was released on his own recognizance. Police declined to say how he may be connected with Julie's murder. Julie was known to hang around bars on the Point Pleasant Pier boardwalk, and police questioned more than 100 people, which made it difficult to narrow down suspects. September 27, 1968 was Julie's funeral, and her burial took place. September 28, 1968, a 25-year-old man was arrested. He was believed to be the last person to see Julie alive on September 3rd. She knew this man because his parents had a summer home in Point Pleasant. The following day, he was released on $10,000 bail. October 17, 1968, the grandma that Julie was going to visit that day passed away, just 1.5 months after Julie went missing. Throughout the 70s, ads ran in the papers as Julie's murder still hadn't been solved. The 2 men who were questioned were not involved in the crime. The case went cold for more than 2.5 decades. December 30th, 1996, a 50-year-old man walked into Seaside Heights Police Department and confessed to murdering Julie. In order to confirm this man was the killer, police pulled dusty boxes from the evidence storeroom and checked archives of local newspapers and compared his statements to the evidence. They had to make sure this man knew details that only the killer would know. The man's name was Albert Talmo. Accompanying Albert was a friend of his who who was a retired police lieutenant who also made a statement to police as Albert had confessed to him. Albert was placed under arrest after making the following confession. In September 1968, Albert was a 22-year-old married man with children. He lived in a mobile home park with his wife and kids in Toms River, New Jersey. He was employed at the Laurelton Diner in Brick Township as a cook. The afternoon of September 3rd, he encountered Julie in a shopping parking lot near the diner. He offered to give her a ride to wherever she was going. Remember, Julie used to hitchhike, so she wouldn't have thought twice about taking a ride from a stranger. She had already been walking for almost an hour already, so no doubt she would have been eager to get a ride. Albert said instead of taking her to where she wanted to go, he drove her to a gravel pit in Herbertsville section of Brick Township. Once they arrived, Albert started to make advances towards Julie, which she fought off. He grabbed a tailpipe he had in the car and began striking her on the head. Albert said he dragged Julie to an area known as Bridgeout and put her in the water and held her down until he was convinced she was dead. January 6, 1997, Albert was charged with felony murder and willful malice aforethought. The judge ordered him held in the county jail in lieu of a $2,000 bail. He faced life in prison if convicted. The remainder of 1997, prosecutors and defense attorneys attended hearings to discuss plea options. It would be another year before Albert learned his fate. February 24, 1998, prosecutors agreed to not seek life in prison, but would impose a 30-year sentence with the possibility of parole. He would be eligible for parole in 8 years depending on the sentencing. Albert pled no contest and tearfully confessed to the judge. Albert would recount his confession, but this time would give more details. It went as follows. Albert told the judge he met the teenager in the parking lot of a store on Route 70 in Brick on September 3, 1968. She had left her mother's home to walk to her grandparents' home in Point Pleasant. Albert offered a ride. She accepted. Albert drove to what he called the gravel pits and tried to kiss her, and that's when things turned deadly. The girl resisted and threatened to call the police if he did not drive her to her grandparents. Albert said he panicked and attacked her. He bashed the girl's head against the dashboard of his car, then hit her with the tailpipe. He described the dash of the 1959 Cadillac as made of steel, covered with leather, and Telmo told the judge he drove to Metaconk River and dropped the unconscious girl into the water. He stated he did not kidnap her. She went willingly, and there was no sex involved. Due to the body being in the water so long, sexual assault could not be determined. So what made Albert come forward and confess after 28 years? Police admitted he was never a suspect, and had he not confessed, Julie's murder would have never been solved. Albert's retired lieutenant friend would testify and shed more light on how this all unfolded. The lieutenant had retired from the Seaside Heights police station but stayed on as the department chaplain after retiring. He met Albert in the fall of 1994 when police were called to Albert's apartment where he had been found drunk, suffering from chest pains and ranting about God. Police asked the chaplain to come and assist with Albert, and the two struck up a friendship. Albert would become a born-again Christian through this friendship. The two spoke regularly until about a year ago when Albert told him he was going to check into a rehab in Florida. He hadn't heard from him again until December 30th, when Albert called him and begged him to meet him at a friend's house in Toms River. Crying and drunk on vodka, Albert revealed his deep secret. The chaplain told Albert he needed to confess to the police. Albert also told the judge that after Julie's murder, the guilt had ruined his life, leading to alcoholism, drug abuse, and despair, and the memory would haunt him. He said, quote, "I was trying to bury myself in alcohol and drugs, hoping that I might not wake up from one of my drunken stupors, or that maybe there might be enough drugs in the syringe so I would not live past the injection." Albert's attorney said his drinking led him to a life of crime. He was convicted more than a dozen times for crimes including assault, burglary, car theft, to weapon possession, and served several years in prison. Once he grabbed the buttocks of a woman he had been drinking with earlier in the night, and when she refused his advances, he broke a frying pan and lamp over her head, causing a wound that required 16 stitches to close. His lawyer went on to say Albert's crimes were rooted in alcoholism, which in turn was a product of his guilt over Julie's murder. Apparently, Albert had tried to confess several times, telling his first wife and some of his friends he had once killed a girl, but no one believed him. He and his first wife divorced, and at some point he had gotten married for a second time. March 27, 1998. The judge sentenced Albert to 27 years in prison with the possibility of parole. However, he could be out within 5. The judge felt due to his criminal history it might be more like 10 years before he would be paroled. Julie's mother was 75 when the police contacted her to tell her someone had been arrested in connection with her daughter's murder. She was surprised to learn an arrest was made but didn't offer much else. She was living in another part of New Jersey by this time. She was 77 when Albert was sentenced and did not attend the hearing. I could not find any record of Albert being paroled. He died October 9, 2012. His wife was mentioned in the obituary, so apparently they were still married. On the Silverton Memorial Funeral Home webpage, this message was left to Albert by one of Julie's brothers. Good luck into future years, along with Julie's birth date and possibly another name she called herself. At this point in my video, I like to memorialize the victim. Unfortunately, not much was shared about Julie, other than the things I mentioned in the beginning of this video. She sounded like a free spirit, and whatever her struggles may have been, she didn't deserve to die that way. I hope she is at peace. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next video.